Hey, MOMnation. Welcome to Mental Wealth with Laura Wood and Katie Holly Lambert, where we talk through generational trauma so we can leave a new legacy for our children. Counselor Laura is with Benevieri Counseling out of Chandler, Arizona, and you can find her on Facebook, on the web, or by the link in the show notes. We hope you enjoy the show.
Here we go. What's up, MOMnation? We are back. It is Thursday. It is not the last Thursday of the month, though, so you might be confused. Why are we seeing Katie and Laura? It's not the last Thursday. I thought this was the thing. And I had Meet the Teacher last Thursday during our showtime. So Laura was gracious and flexible enough to reschedule, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
It is my pleasure. Flexibility is a skill and trait that I do value in my friends. And so I try to be as flexible as I can.
Well, thank you. It's much appreciated. So for those of you who know who we are, I'm Real Estate Katie over here talking with, I so badly want to call you Dr. Laura someday. Someday. But she is not a doctor. Can you kind of just give us just a little synopsis of who you are, what you do, and all of that jazz?
I would love to. I am not a doctor, Laura Wood. I am a licensed therapist, though. So I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm a board certified counselor and an approved clinical supervisor. So I would love if all of those things added up to being a doctor, but they don't. So I own a private practice here in Chandler, Arizona, and I have several therapists and a life coach that work in my practice. And I also am now partnering with a psychiatric nurse practitioner to help support our clients from every single which direction. And my goal is really to just build like a holistic, integrated, full wrap around space where people can find their mental and physical wellness and their family and individual wellness all in one place. So that is what I'm trying to build. And I'm also a mom of 3 very old children that are one of them, which is an adult child, which is a fun oxymoron. He's 19, and then I have a 17-year-old and then a 16-year-old boy. And that is why almost every single scenario that we've ever talked about on this show that moms write in about, I'm like, oh, I've done that.
Yeah. Because you've been through it,
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
And a giant ingredient in that is that you're a single mom also, and you've been a single mom for like 100 years.
At least 100. I've been a single mom for 15 years. My littlest, well, no, maybe 14 and a half, I guess.
Give or take, round up.
Coming up here. Yeah, so since my oldest was 5 and my littlest was 2, I have been doing it on my own. I can't say 100% alone, though. I do have to, really respect my community and my people who have shown up and helped. And the boys have really, really great family. And, my mom, my friends, like, I can't, none of us are in this alone. I think that's such a huge part of what I love about MOMnation. I remember, Katie, we talked about this, why you even started MOMnation, right? Because we're not alone. And it helps to know that sometimes it feels like we're alone.
It helps so much. And I think there are so many stages through motherhood, through mental health journey, through helping your kids, navigate life and all of that, where we feel so alone. And it helps to know or to remember or to be reminded that no, we're not, and we're here to support each other as moms, as friends, as women, that kind of thing. And that is a big part of why we are here every month doing this show and why we do it live. A big part of why we pull out, typically it's usually anonymous posts, and that way we don't, put the poster on blast, even though I would love to have the poster on to ask questions, because we always have so many questions for the OP. But that's a big reason why we do what we do, just to, to aid in offering support to our female community out there.
I love that. And I, I really believe that we are better. The more of us are successful, the better off we all are, right? And I just think it's super special to be able to share our experiences and our thoughts and our, failures and our successes and what we've learned from those with this community of women who are they're just like us. They're doing what we are doing, and they're doing what we already did, and they're doing what we want to do in the future too. So it's just so important. I love this about what you've created here, Katie. I know we're getting into not exactly on topic, but I do think that's so it's just so valuable, and moms need to know that they're not alone, and they're not, the way that they're feeling or the way that they're reacting to their kids, like, doesn't make them bad moms. We all have thoughts like that, right? We all have guilt and pain and regret and remorse. And we also have days where we're like, man, like, sometimes I don't feel like I want to have to do this. Like, but I think sometimes when we do that in our own heads and not with our community, we think, oh, I'm the worst. I have so much shame. I should never say that out loud. Right. And so I think that's a big part of this too.
I love that you said that, because I think what's really cool about our group and about our podcast and kind of our friend circle as a whole that we've developed over the years from, being together and from helping support each other is that we share.
Mhm.
And I personally feel super safe. Even, this group has almost 11,000 moms in it. And I know it's so crazy to think about that.
So
Think
cool.
of where we came from, the little tiny beginnings. But I feel comfortable and safe sharing, sensitive details about my life, about my childhood, about my upbringing, about, what's going on with my kid, with my husband, in my marriage, like stuff like that. And I think that's important. So often we feel like we have to hold that close to the chest and kind of put forth this image that we are indestructible, this sort of perfect porcelain
Right.
image almost of
Yeah.
and I don't know where we get that from or why we feel like we need to be that way, but what I love about our group is that those walls are kind of broken down now, and we can be real with each other, and that is like, I'm getting goosebumps all over. I feel like that is where the real value is in what we do here.
Yeah, for sure. I hear that all the time, like women who say like, oh, I just feel like a mess. Like, adults like don't have all this craziness, right? Like, I need to get my shit together kind of thing. Like, how many times have I said that? Like, get your life together. I need to get my life together. Like, I feel like that was like my tagline for like 20 years. Right. So, I mean, it's like this pervasive sort of belief that we have to be a certain way or do a certain thing or whatever, like show up literally, like when you were saying that, Katie, like I'm going to scooch. Do you guys see my sink if you're on the video, you can see that there are like pans, like in my sink, kind of like showing that I'm literally sitting in front of in the video. So you can't see it. And I
strategically
spent a lot of time like positioning this camera so that it wouldn't show that I have like pots in my sink. Because I happen to be at home today because my hot water heater went out, which is why my hair is not washed and I look a mess. So, I mean, it's just like, talk about needing to look a certain way, right? Where it's like, it's like you don't have that freedom to be human sometimes, I think. And I think that's really harmful. And it's also really isolating, right? Like, it fills us with shame and doubt about like, why does everybody else like look like they kind of have it together? And I don't. But it's like, if we all only knew that like we're all lying about
we all have
we're all
things,
sitting in front of a pile of dirty dishes for the
broken
camera,
water heaters,
like blocking them for the camera, right? Like, that's really all we're doing. So
exactly. But I love that you shared that, because that just illustrates, what we were talking about, how we can be real with each other, and it's cool and it's fine, and nobody's going to think less of Laura as a person because she has a couple of pans in her sink, but we don't feel that way.
Yeah. And maybe they do, and that's what makes them feel better. Like, and that is great. I love that for you. Like, whatever, whatever.
I feel like this conversation does give us a good transition into the topic
Ah.
today, though, because when we were sort of pre-talking right before we hopped on live, we read this post. So we're going to be talking about an anonymous post again, guys, and I'll pop it up here in just a second. But you specifically said, I can relate with this one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think many of us can. So I'm just going to share it real quick. And for those of you that are listening to the audio version, I will read it. It is an anonymous member. This post came in 2 days ago. How do you forgive yourself for the mistakes you made as a parent? Who does not feel like that? You know what I mean? When you look back and see how much your child went without the mom they should have had, and you can see how badly it affects them in their life as they move into adulthood. I never left my kids. I was always there for them, but I have been working on myself lately, and my oldest is almost 18, and I can see now how much I was not there for him. I have always loved him, but I didn't love him. I never cheered him on, told him how handsome he is or how amazing he is. I always tried to be the voice of reason, but now I see it was just negativity my kids didn't need. I see his sweet face in my brain and think of how much I must have made him feel inadequate and probably even unloved. I live my life and try to move forward, but if anything triggers those feelings, the guilt is unbearable and I completely break down. How do I forgive myself? Like truly forgive myself? I think we can all relate. I can see my baby's sweet face in my head too. And, and I know every single moment of my parenthood throughout his childhood was not perfect.
Yeah. I mean, that is so I have a son who's 19, right? My second son will be 18 in like 4 months.
Crazy.
And so looking at that post saying, oh, my kid's almost 18, I'm doing my own work. I'm seeing all these things that now I'm reflecting on and like processing. And so it's just like, it can be so overwhelming. Right. And so like, I first just like feel for this mom who's doing her work. And that's hard. And it's investing in yourself as a mom. It's really hard to do. Right. Like if I can scrape a little bit of money together, like I'm going to buy my kids shoes. I'm not going to go to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to not spend that hour on myself. I'm not going to do that. And so first of all, just doing the work is super hard. And then I think a side effect of doing the work is just this realization. And so you sort of get this like rush of like overwhelming kind of feelings of like understanding things now that you didn't understand then. And then you get this like sort of Monday morning quarterback. And so I think this is just a response to doing the work. I think it's important to sort of like explain that, right? Like when we start to look back and we start to like improve ourselves and our capacity to be connected with others, then we start to notice all the times that we weren't. And then those seem like more of the time than any other time.
Yeah.
Right. So like this big pile of stuff is like the biggest thing that you can see because it just so happens to be associated with some of the other stuff that you're learning right now. Right. So it's like, this is the suitcase that's like in the front of the cart, and so that can be why it feels so overwhelming. And the other thing is, one of the questions that I ask myself and I ask clients too is like, how do we know that that what they're going through is because of us in that moment, right? Like we can be accountable. So we'll talk about that too. But just in general, when we look at our kids' struggles and we see our kids struggling through the lens of our own failure, then we're unable to actually attune to our child's struggle and be there for them. Right? Because we are suddenly trying to reconcile our own feelings of failure. And we're not actually in it with the kid. We're not actually sitting with them and saying like, I'm really sorry you're going through this. Like, tell me more about what's happening for you. Right? Because we're thinking, well, if I had only been a better mom, if I had only shown up for you, like you wouldn't be feeling this way. You wouldn't have gotten into this relationship that's not healthy, or you would have been working, you would have been more effective, you would have been more successful, like had I only been better. Whereas they're coming to you saying like, I had a really tough day, like, and our guilt is like, I'm so sorry. Like, I just totally ruined everything. Like, I've just been the worst mom to you. Like, I haven't been there for you. And so it's like this sort of tricky sense of like, whose feelings are we addressing here?
And that gives me anxiety as a child.
Yeah, it does. It can. Yeah, for sure. I mean, because then it's like, well, I was going through this thing, but like now it's about you. Okay, cool. So like
Right.
there's that part of it, but that's not the most, it's not that it's harmful or not that we're like putting our stuff on our kid. It's like this overwhelming guilt can really feel like the most important thing in the room because it feels like the biggest thing in the room. But it's important that we know that we don't, just because we feel this way and we've recognized these old habits that we're changing now, doesn't mean as much as we make it mean.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we assign so much meaning to it. We make it mean that we've totally damaged our children. We haven't, probably.
Right. Right.
I mean, we've probably done some harm, right? Because nobody gets out of this unscathed.
Right. Who doesn't?
No, nobody can attune to their kids 100% of the time. Like, I cannot attune to another person's brain and body 100% of the time because I am not in their mind, right? Like, so
Right.
there's just bound to be moments in time where we're not there for our kids, and that's okay. Right? Like, think about, oh, if I was sick or if I was hospitalized or if I was whatever, I'm not there. They could carry that with them. That's not my fault. That's not right. It's just life. So that's okay. The last thing generally is it's never too late. It's not. If you can have that conversation with your child and say, you know what, calmly and without trying to get your needs met, but say to them, like, you know, I really recognize that there are all these moments that you may have needed me, but I wasn't able to be there for you the way that you deserved. And I want you to know that I am really sorry that I couldn't do that at those times. And that you are never going to stop being my child. And I will always work to be there for you. And if there's anything that you feel like you want to discuss or that has hurt you, that you feel like we could talk about, that maybe you have questions about, or maybe you're upset, I'm here to listen to that.
I like that because I feel like we can tarnish future moments and future opportunities with past guilt.
Yes, that's a really good way to say it.
And so we're kind of still operating in that same cycle, even though we've grown, we've learned.
Exactly.
You know, and now we're
so
still
doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's that cycle. Because the guilt is the fear, and it's that we are dysregulated. So like, so I'm creating a training right now for other therapists to work with parents and kids. And I'm writing the test. So I have the same answer for like 10 of the test questions. The answer is they are dysregulated and neurocepting danger. That is the answer to like all the questions. Okay, so you're dysregulated and you're neurocepting danger. When you're experiencing this guilt, when you were in the past not showing up for your kid because of whatever was going on with you, you were dysregulated and neurocepting danger in some way. That's what prevents you from attuning to your kid in the first place. Everybody, all the time. You're dysregulated and you're neurocepting danger. You're dysregulated because you're anxious about work. You're dysregulated because you're distressed because your kid is in distress and you don't know what to do. You're dysregulated because your relationship is presenting you with challenges. Your house is messy, whatever, right? So for all of those reasons, we become dysregulated. And when we're dysregulated, we don't attune to others because we are responsible first for attuning to our own needs. We have to become safe first. So I can't attune to you until I feel safe. So the same is happening now. The guilt is dysregulating. I am dysregulated and I'm neurocepting danger. The danger is that I've harmed my child, which makes me feel horrible, which makes me depressed, which is dangerous. All of this stuff, right? So I'm dysregulated, I'm neurocepting danger. So the answer is get present in this moment right now. Are you actively harming your child? Probably not. If you are, please stop. If you're not in that moment, recognize, my kid is struggling, and maybe this is an opportunity where I can sit with you and show up and experience your experience with you and just support you through it. I don't have to solve it. I don't have to fix it, but I can sit here with you and say like, man, I'm sorry you're struggling. Like, I've got you.
Mm-hmm. And do you see this ever, or do you feel like this gives us an opportunity as a parent? Because the poster mentions that she's working on herself. So she's learning things, right? And she's probably making some discoveries and whatnot. Is this an opportunity where she has an adult on her hands pretty much, where they can grow and learn together, and she can kind of help guide that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, depending on what the kid is going through, I work with a lot of kids, like teens and parents, like together, to kind of say like, hey, this is where this relationship dynamic has caused you guys this cycle of whatever is happening. And so let's stop this cycle here and now by learning how to recognize when this cycle is happening, and then get regulated, get calm, get present, and address whatever's happening in reality, right? Like the present reality. So there's absolutely a ton of opportunity for that work. I think it's really important. And imagine, like, I don't know, if all the adults out there could imagine that their parent apologized to them for not showing up the way that they deserved, because they recognized that like they were maybe going through a hard time, or they were experiencing depression or anxiety or like untreated trauma or whatever. And they're like, that impacted you. And I didn't realize that at the time. And I'm really sorry that happened. And I wish that I want you to know that I recognize that you deserved for me to be there, and I'm here for you now. Can you imagine like how much better you would feel if your parents like owned up to like not being there and just like,
yeah, and didn't follow up and make it about them after?
Totally.
Because that's the part that ruins it,
That's such a good point. Say more about that.
Well, for instance, in my experience, I've had some apologies for some things throughout the years, but it's been followed up with, but this is what was going on with me. And, I did the best I can, and, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden the whole thing was lost by the time they got through their chapter, that chapter of their lives. And where I understand that they had things going on, and that's probably relevant to the story, let's take a minute and make it about me for a second.
Yeah. End the sentence, then go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It just seems like that whole coming to the surface with that knowledge and that understanding, and that apology really is just lost, is just forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another part of it is that when we apologize, it's important not to assume that our kids are totally damaged.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're humans who are actually like trying to live their lives. And by us like feeling so guilty and bad, we're essentially projecting that our kids are like ineffective and damaged because of our own failures, right? Like, so not only are we like kind of leaning into that cycle of dysregulation, but we're also sort of telling our kids that we don't think that they're doing very well. Like,
or capable of,
as a human. Yeah. Like they're not capable.
Right.
And I'm guilty of that. One of my kids' therapists had shared with me like that he was experiencing sort of like a learned helplessness.
Interesting.
And at that time, like I was kind of thinking about it from a lot of different perspectives, but over time it sort of has narrowed into this more of, for me, I had been so guilty that it was like everything I did was essentially projecting that he wasn't okay. Right? So like my overcompensation and my feelings of guilt and like overly doing this whole like, it's okay. Like I wasn't there for you before, so I'll be there for you now. Like just so much over and over and over. Right? Like the apology, like the repair is important because it's a thing. It's a thing that happens, and then we move forward. We don't sit in it. Right? Like that's really important.
Here's where I see that a lot. Oh, sorry to interrupt you. Go.
Oh, no. Well, I think it took me a long time to stop apologizing and just start doing better, right? I was just sort of cycling in this like apology guilt cycle.
Yeah, I totally get that. And coming from a family of divorced parents, and I work with a lot of people that are divorcing, like, because they got to sell their house and whatnot. So I do work with that a lot. And it can be sad, but honestly, I feel like I'm delivering a lot of value to this family that just needs some sort of understanding and some sort of help during a really, you know, stressful situation. So that's why I like to work with divorced couples. I know it sounds weird, but I do. But what I see where this happens a lot is guilt from divorce, guilt from splitting up from the spouse or the dad or the mom or whatever that family dynamic is. I see a lot of moms falling into that. Like they will literally do anything and everything for their kid to their kid's detriment, really, in some cases. You know, I can get that extreme, but I see that come a lot from guilt of choices that the parent either had to make or made, and they're kind of feeling some remorse on that.
What a good point too, just in terms of how we make up for it, right? Like how that shows up in our actions and like our desperation to sort of like make things a certain way, like in order to mitigate the pain somehow. But like, that's really not authentic, right? So we're not having an authentic relationship with the child's distress in that moment. We're saying like, feel less distressed by distracting by this other thing. Like, I'll get you your own room, or we'll have this. Right. So like, when we do that, not only are we projecting fear of the distress, we're projecting that it's bad and like unbearable to talk about or to experience. We're projecting that you're going to be unhappy unless you get everything you want. Right. So like, we're sort of like writing this story before it even happens. And we're assigning this displeasure with how things will be and that it's not going to be good enough before we even like go into it. And so what the parents, what the child needs the parents to do is project calm confidence that demonstrates like, I know that as a human, I have done certain things and made mistakes. And like, I'm really grateful that I've learned from that, because I'm not going to do that anymore. And so now I want to connect with you on a deeper level. So like, I'm wondering if we can spend more time together or whatever, right? Like we're going to work towards building up our relationship again, but then we're not going to try to like make up for it now. We're not going to try to redo or solve for it and sit in it. We're going to move forward and project like, I'm capable. Like, I had made mistakes, but that doesn't make me just like a horrible failure as a mom. Like, my kid is still here, alive, you know, stable and capable.
Right.
So when we take all this ownership, we're really preventing our kid from realizing that they're stable, alive, here, and capable, because we're like, basically everything we've ever did was totally ruin our kids. Which I can totally relate to. Like, I've had these moments and have them frequently, actually, like all the time. I'm a mom of kids who are turning into adults, and it's like, oh my God, did I do enough? Like, what have I done?
It's hard. There's no handbook. We don't know how to do this. We're figuring it out.
And so we have to fall back on, you're capable. I'm a leader here. And I am going to continue to lead you as I have now learned, and I'm capable and I'm doing a good job. And, you know, I'm going to keep being me and being great and owning up to any mistakes that I make and moving forward from them and, you know, repairing those ruptures. But I'm also going to lead my child to knowing that he is capable and confident and can do these hard things. And I'm going to sit with him while we do it together to learn and to grow and to practice. Right. Like,
That's so giant because, a conversation that I have with my husband all the time is I'm looking forward like to when he's 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Like I'm looking at what's going on now and what am I teaching and supporting now? And how is that going to manifest when he is an adult of those ages? And, it's important, I feel, to help them understand that they are capable and to not hinder that. I mean, I know there's going to be certain levels of that growing up because, when they're little kids, they can barely do anything for themselves. And,
Totally.
we kind of got to back off of that, whether that be physical things or, emotional, mental things, whatever. But I totally full on agree or feel that supporting their ability to think of themselves as fully capable adults that don't have my hangups, which is why we do this show, right? Is important. I mean, that's the way I think. I don't know if that's right or not, but it's what's constantly the tape that constantly runs through my head is how is this going to manifest in his personality and the way he thinks in 20 years?
So I think what's important about, there's two things about that. I would be cautious not to make everything mean something. And, notice just what's happening right now, right? Because so as you develop the relationship and the capability, right? Like that's what you're, so when somebody recognizes that they're capable and they have, so in order to develop like an intrinsic internal motivation for your whole self is you have to have purpose, autonomy, and mastery. So those are the three ingredients that come with, or that are developed that make motivated people who feel like I'm going to get up today and I'm going to go do stuff and I'm going to exist, right? Purpose, autonomy, mastery. So that, right? So you're doing those things and you're giving him those things, and giving him those things now is by default going to allow him to be a successful adult. And so you can knowingly and confidently experience this moment of now so that you don't have to rewrite it later.
The future. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you've made the decision to consistently execute on this strategy. You don't have to keep replaying it.
Worrying. I'm a little bit of a warrior.
Sure.
Well, wait. Warrior, yes. Worrier is probably a better way of pronouncing that. But this about me. I'm constantly freaking out about that.
And it's easy to make things mean something, right? Like I have heard that 1,000 times, like, oh, if I don't teach them this now, like they're going to go out and be an adult who's like a dum-dum or something. But it's like, okay, sure. If you never teach it to them ever, and in every single interaction, this is lacking, like, sure, they're going to go out and be a dum-dum, right? But odds are that this one moment is not going to be that, right? Like it's like, we can put less pressure on every moment and let a theme of sort of authentic connection, attunement, and support dictate, like those values can dictate all things within a framework, right? Like we don't have to sort of, if your kid comes home and it's like, I hate this other kid, because he's stupid and ugly. Okay, that doesn't mean your kid's a jerk. That doesn't mean your kid's like bad. Like, doesn't mean he's a bully. Like, no, he's just having a bad day, right? You know what I mean? Like, so we are like, oh my gosh, like my kid's saying he hates other kids. Like, oh my God, like what kind of,
whoa. We freak out.
Right. So it's like, oh, geez, Louise, you seem really upset. What's going on? Right? Like, let's just be in it and like move through it. Doesn't have to mean everything.
It's hard not to, and maybe it's just the way that I'm programmed, and I'm sure other people out there can relate, but it's hard not to for me.
Oh yeah.
And I sometimes keeps me up at night, and I'm replaying, the events of the day, and I'm like, oh shit. But overall, I feel like my kid's a pretty darn good kid, and the feedback that I get from, out in the wild is pretty positive. So I'm going to rely on that.
Yeah, like I think a helpful exercise is actually to like define those strategy pillars, right? So like I talk like I'm running a business, but like, that's true, right? So we run a business like we run a family. We run a family like we run a business, because everything is based on values, right? Based on specific beliefs and values and things that we want to accomplish and experience. So if we have these strategy pillars of authentic connection, attunement, presence, time, right? Like, those are the things that we really value the most. Can we make mistakes? Of course. Those mistakes will not derail the whole train unless we're just totally living inconsistently with our values, which in those cases, recognize it and work towards it. But define those, like, what do I really want my kid to walk away from childhood with?
Mm-hmm.
I want my kid to know that they were loved, they are important, they have the right to set boundaries and make choices and make mistakes. They have the ability to pivot, change their mind, come up with something new.
Mm-hmm.
And that no matter what, I've got them. We're going to be okay. Even if it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if every kid knows those things, I'm loved, I'm important, I have support, I can make mistakes and make decisions, I have agency, pretty sure that kid is going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not going to need to go out and get his emotional needs met from other people or overcompensate for the, fear of failure that he has by, projecting just like and controlling other people. Like, he's not going to have to go reenact his developmental needs meeting
With
in
others,
the world.
yeah. Right. Right. I get that so much. And I'm actually going to watch that replay again because I want to hear everything that you just said again. But what understanding everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
What, or can you give some examples on some things that parents can do if they're unsure of how can I show my child they're loved? How can I show my child they're important? And what kinds of things can I do? Again, understanding everybody's different, every kid's different, but are there any kind of universal things that you can share?
One thing is actually to make it explicit, which is to say those things out loud. Like, hey, you're a super important person in the world. Your opinion matters a great deal. Your people are lucky to hear from you. If you have something to share in class or in a group, speak up because what you have to say matters.
Mm.
No matter what you do or say or think or feel, I'll never think you're bad or I'll never leave you. I'll never stop caring for you and loving you, no matter what your behavior is. Those explicitly are things that we don't hear ever. Kids are not implicit learners. They will not deduce. They need to they'll not figure it out based on your actions as much as they will if you literally just say that, right? So they'll feel it. They can feel if you're not present, if you're dismissive, or if you're not paying attention, they'll know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are paying attention, they'll feel safer, they'll feel more comfortable, they'll feel that way. But if you're feeling unsure and you are just I want my kid to know that they're the best, just be dude, you're cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Your stories are funny. You're super creative. Listen to their stories and giggle and laugh at their silliness, even if it's factually inaccurate. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get caught up in the details. Just be oh my gosh, how funny that you thought of that. Clever. I would have never thought about it that way. Be amazed, be impressed, be excited to care for them. In a way, for example, often we kind of show our sense of burden or tiredness, right? It's easy
yeah, you're going to grandma's this weekend.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's easy to be like, oh, okay, I'll get up. Like, we have to do that. Like, we're sort of like, basically what we're doing is we're teaching our kid, like, hey, you're really difficult. Like,
Yeah.
you're a burden to me.
Yeah.
This is
Like,
inconvenient, right? So we
it's
want to kind of
exhausting.
try to not do that
Yeah.
less. We're not perfect. We're going to be like annoyed sometimes, just like we get at our adult friends and everything else, right? Like, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But just thematically, as a whole strategy, just do that less and do more of being excited about, hey, do you want a sandwich? I'm gonna make a sandwich. Do you want to help me make some sandwiches? Right? Invite them to do things with you. Invite yourself to do things with them. Like, oh, what are you playing? Do you mind if I watch? Be interested.
My kid loves that. I just sit on his bed and watch him build stuff.
Yeah. Like, it's super simple. Make it explicit. Act like you're interested in what they have to say. Like, show them that you like them. Not that you love them and care for them because you have to, but like you literally enjoy their company, right? Like, you're fun to be around. You're a smart person, independently from how you make me feel, right? Like, you as a human being, separate from me, are really clever and unique. Like, that's where I would start. Like, it doesn't have to be hard. Just say it. It sounds weird and maybe is awkward and it might take some practice, or your kid will be like, really, mom? Like, you're weird. I'm like, maybe.
I can totally relate. So yesterday, Jax came home from school and, sometimes if I'm working or whatnot, he'll just kind of go get a snack or whatever, and he won't bug me, but he was excited. And so he came to see me in my office and he's like, Mom, I got to tell you this story. And I'm literally in the middle of like 500 things, right? I took a deep breath and I was like, okay, great to see you. Let's hear the story. And he told me this story about it's a new school. And so he's not quite used to all the rooms yet. And he went to the bathroom in the ladies' room. And and didn't, obviously, what he had to do because he didn't realize there were no urinals. And so he came out and there was a teacher in there. And the teacher was like, hi. And he said, wait, is this the ladies' room or the men's room? And she goes, I don't know. I'm confused too. And she kind of like played with him a little bit. And it was really cute how he retold the story. But I just died laughing. And did I over embellish my laugh a little bit? Okay.
Sure.
But we had a connection, and then he told me another story, and then he told me another story where, a lot of times I'll be like, hey, tell me what happened at school today. Tell me what was cool. Tell me what was funny. And be like, I don't remember. But that connection, all of a sudden it started to flow and the excitement was there. And it really was a cool little bonding moment.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is just be there on their time when they need you as much as you can. It's not always possible, right? Like, if one of my kids right now wanted to come and tell me a story, I probably would be like, okay, I just need a couple minutes, right? Like, it's not always possible, but it's possible enough of the time to like make up for the times that it's not. You know what I mean? Like, kids need things to be predictable. They need to know that when they come to you, they're not going to be rejected.
Right.
That's
one thing you taught me that I love, and I'm forever grateful for all the things, but this was a really giant one, is look, they don't need an hour. If you turned around and you looked at him and you paid attention for his 5-minute story and you had another 5-minute conversation, that's like 10 minutes out of your day. Whoa. And all of a sudden, everybody leaves this moment feeling fulfilled.
Right.
Versus me feeling later guilty that I was like, too busy, and him feeling rejected, like mom is always working, doesn't have any time for me.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's like, so I have this thing, I say it's 15 minutes a day. Spend 15 minutes a day, every single day, if possible, right? Not everybody has the luxury of time. Some moms work 3 jobs, some work, right? Like, so let's be real here, but this is a strategy. So the strategy doesn't always land exactly, but overall, the theme is to intend to spend 15 minutes a day, every day, interacting with your kid on their terms. You can't correct them. You can't teach them anything in that moment. You can't dictate what they do or don't do. You can't like try to change their mind or their thoughts. All you can do is just exist. Like be interested, be excited, do whatever they want. Like if they're playing, go play with them what they're playing. Don't ask them to play something different. You don't have to go anywhere. Like you said, sit on their couch and watch them build something or watch them play a game. Like literally just engage with them for 15 minutes on their terms without trying to correct or teach. 15 minutes every day.
Which is hard.
So hard.
I have a hard time.
It's really hard.
Correcting. It's
really hard for a lot of reasons, which we could totally get into on another episode. Like, why is it so hard to just like sit with your kid? Because I've seen posts like I hate playing with my kids. Like I've literally seen posts that say that. Like so, and I can relate. Like I was never like, I didn't like to play. Like even now, I like nonfiction versus fiction. Like I just whatever.
Right.
You get used to it. You figure it out. Because playing with your kids is literally a developmental need that you're meeting. Like kids have to play. They learn through play. It's a developmental necessity. And so a child's survival it's ingrained in them that they have to play. It's just part of the whole growth system. So that's a literal requirement, unfortunately, for those of us who are just not that fun. I'm not that fun. I'm not fun.
I'm not that fun. I mean, I'm getting funner. Is that a word? I'm getting more fun.
That's it.
The older he gets.
Right.
And the more like we can talk about history and he's starting to kind of get into old school Nintendo video games. Okay. I like Super Mario Brothers. He's starting to get into that. And I'm like,
love that.
Yes.
Yeah. So just do a little bit. It's hard to sit still, but guess what? If you take a 5-minute break before you finish reading or writing the email that you're on, or before you finish folding the laundry or whatever, because it doesn't have to be 15 minutes at a time, right? So collective, a cumulative 15 minutes in a 24-hour period is what I'm asking you for here, okay? Which is it's harder than the math seems.
It's
true.
Whatever. It's true.
Try to make it work a couple minutes at a time, as much as you can tolerate. You'll get a bigger tolerance for stillness over time. At first you'll feel anxious, like you need to get things done. You're not present. You're freaking out, whatever. You'll get used to it. A couple minutes at a time, be present, take a break. No one's going to die. I mean, unless you're literally doing open heart surgery.
Right.
But you're
I love that you said, anything can wait for 15 minutes. And I love that you said that try to shut off that, oh my gosh, I'm idle. I could be doing something right now. I could be folding laundry.
I have so many other things to be doing.
It's hard, especially when you're used to multitasking, especially, I mean, being a single mom, how much do you multitask?
How many responsibilities? You just have too much to do. You're never going to get it all done.
Right.
So this is a priority.
That's key, is you're never going to get it all done. So should you stress yourself out trying to get it all done? Should you stress yourself out or create opportunities where you're going to have more guilt to stress yourself out more, trying to get it done? Like, it's such a cycle.
It really is. And so like accepting that you're never going to get it all done is one part. I read this article the other day about doing cleaning in like bursts. So like 5 minutes, like literally set a timer. 5 minutes, I'm going to clean this 10 by 10 square of my house. Perfect. As much as I can do in 5 minutes. Kind of similarly, right? Like I'm going to take 2 to 3 minutes at a time to like engage with my kid, to like play, whatever. You don't have to do everything all at once. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to like work up to it. You're going to have to build a tolerance for just sitting still. You will. You can't. I just guarantee it.
Yeah.
You have to build a tolerance for that. It doesn't come naturally. Not to moms.
No, because we're just I think our habit is just to go. And habits are hard to break, especially when you don't know that you have that habit or you're not recognizing that you have that habit. I mean, how often do we work on autopilot too? Like how often are we so exhausted that you literally are like, I don't remember getting that load of laundry done, but it's done. So I must have, you know what I mean? Just exhausted. And the
Yeah.
older I get, the more that happens to me. And it's a little scary because it's like, wow, I guess, old age starts kicking in and those things start to happen.
Yeah. I mean, we have to really like stop and think and slow down. And I know as a parent of multiple kids, right? How many 15 minutes can I really get? Right. But like, how many sets of minutes are there to take care of 5, 6 kids sometimes, right? Like there's a lot of kids. That's okay. Like I said, we're not perfect, but like we're working towards a strategy here, right? Like we're working under umbrellas of like values and themes so that we're always thinking about that first. That comes first, then the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about being perfect. It's just about trying really hard to be intentional and like doing the things that matter the most. And when you look back at the last 18 years, are you going to be like super glad that like you sent that email on time?
Right. Are you even going to remember?
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel you. I think that's a good place for us to stop this topic. If I feel like there's a part 2. I always say that though.
How many part 2s do we have?
I don't know. I think we need to go back through the whole playlist and say, okay, part 2, part 2, part 2, part 2. And then we have a whole new season, Laura.
I know.
Of content just by part 2ing.
I know.
It's true though. There's a lot to talk about. A lot happens, a lot comes up. It's such a moving target, I think, being a mom.
Oh my gosh. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
That is a really good way to put it, for sure.
It's a mover. So for those awesome mamas that can totally relate with you, love your style, love your information, and want more, how can they get more?
You can find me at benaviri.com, BENAVIERI. My website's there. You can schedule appointments with the therapist in my practice, or you can read some of this type of stuff on the blog, social. We have some videos, and you can find this whole playlist there too.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you. And I always have a link to your stuff in the show notes as well, just to make it easy for our audience. For those of you who want to check out any of our past part 1s, go on over to our YouTube channel. It is at MOMnation USA. That is our handle. Scroll down just a little bit. We are in bright yellow and it is called The Mental Wealth Show. So check that out. If you are, prefer the audio version, you're more of a podcaster, like the audio style, then hop on over to your favorite podcast platform, do a quick search for MOMnation Talk Radio. And that is where you will find our channel, do all the things, click the bell, do the likes, the notifications, download reviews, like all the things that you can do. Help us to get this information out to the moms that really need to hear it. Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you, MOMnation.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.